Mr. President, you put the Houthis back on the terror list. How do you see the war in Yemen end?
Well, we'll see what happens, but they can't shoot down our ships, the Houthis.
Yes.
You can't shoot down our ships or any ships, and that's what they've been doing. So they're on the terror list. That's not good for them.
Sir, why did you revoke security protections for former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Brian Hook?
Well, the same reason I do. When you have protection, you can't have it for the rest of your life. Do you want to have a large detail of people guarding people for the rest of their lives? I mean, there's risks to everything.
In a shocking move, former President Donald Trump has ended the security details for 3 of his former officials, Mike Pompeo, Brian Hook, and John Bolton. This decision comes just 72 hours into his second term and despite warnings from the Biden administration about ongoing threats from Iran. The Biden team had informed Trump's new administration about the risks these officials face due to their actions during Trump's first term, particularly the airstrike that killed Iranian General Qasem Soleimani in early 2020. Bolton expressed his disappointment, stating, "I am disappointed but not surprised that President Trump has decided to terminate the protection previously provided by the United States Secret Service. This marks a significant shift, as Bolton had his security detail reinstated by Biden in 2021 after Trump had removed it during his first presidency." The Department of Justice revealed that a suspected member of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps attempted to hire assassins to kill Bolton between October 2021 and April 2022. This plot underscores the serious risks these former officials face. Under U.S. protocol, only former presidents and their spouses are guaranteed ongoing protection. However, U.S. intelligence agencies had assessed that Pompeo, Hook, and Bolton were at significant risk, prompting the Biden administration to provide them with security. Despite the clear threats, Trump's decision to revoke their protection raises questions about the safety of these officials. As tensions with Iran continue, the implications of this decision could be far-reaching. The world watches closely as the situation unfolds.
You say, Jim Smith, you've done a hell of a lousy job. You're late and you don't treat our vets right. Jim, I'm sorry, you're fired. Get out of here. Right?
Next, we have a set of pardons for peaceful pro-life protesters who were prosecuted by the Biden administration for exercising their First Amendment rights.
Do you know how many?
I believe it's 23, sir.
23 people were prosecuted. They should not have been prosecuted. Many of them are elderly people. They should not have been prosecuted. This is a great honor to sign this.
Is the State Department currently preparing to engage with the Biden transition team? And if not, at what point does a delay hamper a smooth transition or pose a risk to national security?
There will be a smooth transition to a second Trump administration. All right, we're ready. The world is watching what's taking place here. We're going to count all the votes. When the process is complete, there'll be electors selected. There's a process. The Constitution lays it out pretty clearly. The world should have every confidence that the transition necessary to make sure that the State Department is functional today, successful today, and successful with the president who's in office on January 20th, mid-afternoon, will also be successful.
When I was a cadet, what's the cadet motto at West Point? You will not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. I was the C.I.A. director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses. It reminds you of the glory of the American experiment.
Committed a crime. He's threatening me. It was in my car. With my dog sitting next to me. I'll never forget this. And I said, are you really saying that to reveal that the U.S. government had a role in the murder of a democratically elected president, to say that out loud, that's the crime? What about the actual crime, which is murdering a president? Like, you're covering up for that, Mike Pompeo.
What did he say to that?
He had no response at all. And so Mike Pompeo is the one who pressed Trump to keep those documents secret. And so it's like, what's crazy to me is not just that Pompeo did that. I think Pompeo is a really sinister person and a criminal. I think that because the facts suggest that. He was caught. Yahoo News, Mike Isikoff wrote a long piece on this several years ago. His employees went to Mike Isikoff and said, hey, Mike Pompeo is plotting to murder Julian Assange, who's never even been charged with a crime in the United States, as CIA director. That's illegal. You're not allowed. Federal employees are not allowed to just kill people they don't like, okay? Just to set the baseline here. So that's who Mike Pompeo is. But he somehow intimidated Trump into not releasing this. Well, okay, that's all bad. Right? I think it's criminal behavior.
I get asked this all the time. Like, you're the Secretary of State for the United States of America, and yet you're an evangelical Christian. How do you mesh those two? It's kind of a silly question to me, because everything I do is informed by my understanding of what it is that Jesus instructs us to do. Right? It informs everything that I do every day. It's not that I don't make mistakes and get things wrong. Goodness knows my wife would tell you I am an authentic Christian. I have my moments, but. You can't separate the two. It's like I'm going to go do my government job and then I'm going to go do my job for the Lord. For me, these were a part, and it drove the New York Times nuts. There's a couple great headlines. One was mockingly, it says, we shouldn't worry about Vladimir Putin. Mike Pompeo is an evangelical nut job. And then I got it a little wrong, but it's very close to that. The other one was Mike Pompeo, God's diplomat, which of course on my epitaph, I'd take that.
Oh yeah,
right?
amen.
Like, it was meant. The article doesn't read that way, but and you know, I remember so many times I would walk in. So I was often in the Middle East working on the Abraham Accords, or when we were trying to convince the Taliban to behave. You're sitting across from people who aren't Christian. You're sitting across from Muslims, who they are of the Abrahamic tradition, but they have a very different view of this than we do. And I would always take a moment before I walked in and just pray to make sure that I was doing my duty appropriately.
Well, let me ask you a question. When you walked into some of those meetings, especially with the Abraham Accords, and you're dealing with leaders from the Muslim community, Muslim nations, because they knew you were an evangelical, did they trust you more or less?
Oh, that's a great question. Easy. More. Far more. I'll give you a story that proves this. I was in Cairo. I'd wanted to go give this speech. You'll remember President Obama goes to Cairo and gives what became known as the apology speech, the apology tour. And I was Secretary said I could go to Cairo and give the other speech, and I wanted to do that. So we get it all set up. And I'm drafting the remarks in the weeks up to it. And it keeps, I had as the very first line, I had, Mike, I am an evangelical Christian, as the opening line of this speech in Cairo. And it was very intentional. The speech writing team would like mark it out, and it'd come back. And finally I bring the team up and I said, I want to do this because I think it's important that they know where my values come from. And so you can go read the speech or listen to the speech online. I received more positive feedback from the Islamic world from that speech than any other thing I did during my entire time in them.
Mike Pompeo is in Saudi Arabia because, of course, we have a classic whodunit on our hands. We do know, and we have known for years, both the Obama administration and the Trump administration, whodunit in terms of mass murder in Yemen, and it's also us. We're accomplices in the crime. But whodunit of the interrogation and murder of Jamal Khashoggi. So here's what we know. It's important to re-review this because this isn't just taking Turkish reports at face value. This is, we have CCTV footage of Jamal Khashoggi goes into the Saudi embassy, the Saudi consulate, and doesn't leave. And then we have the surveillance footage of that team that came from Saudi, including a DNA expert. So that's what we know. Supposedly the Saudis have been preparing, and they're putting out the story that this was an interrogation gone wrong, which
like a Coen Brothers situation.
Right. It was a very Coen Brothers situation. And I mean, I guess in the strict, like, they're pretty much they're like, yeah, we tortured him and we're interrogating him. We were going to abduct him, and then I guess somebody got a little overly frisky and murdered him.
See, I told you there was an innocent explanation.
I told you
all
there was an innocent explanation. They're obviously, literally right now as we speak, if they haven't decided already, figuring out who's expendable here. And no doubt MBS felt comfortable doing this in the context of a Trump presidency. Donald Trump calls the press the enemy of the people all the time. MBS is just following his lead. But here's Mike Pompeo in Saudi Arabia, and there's an interesting accidental word choice in this clip, but of course you can tell as representative of the Trump team, they're really serious about getting to the bottom of the murder of Jamal Khashoggi.
Sir, did they tell you what happened to Jamal Khashoggi?
Told me they were going to conduct a thorough, complete, transparent investigation. They made a commitment to hold anyone connected to any wrongdoing that may be found accountable for that, whether they are a senior officer or official. They promised accountability for each of those persons whom they determine as a result of their investigation deserves accountability.
Including a member of the royal family?
They made no exceptions to who they would hold accountable. They were very clear. They understand the importance of this issue.
That was implied.
They're determined to get to the bottom of it, and that they will conduct the report, and we'll all get a chance to see it. They each promised that they would achieve that for us.
And did they say that Mr. Khashoggi is alive or dead?
I don't want to talk about any of the facts. They didn't want to either, in that they want to have the opportunity to complete this investigation in a thorough way. And I think that's a reasonable thing to do, to give them that opportunity, and then we'll all get to judge.
Right. So they want an opportunity to figure out what their core cover story is for the abduction and murder of this guy, the detention of him in a consulate. And I will say, given MBS's record and his moves against rival members of the royal family, I would not be surprised.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has had a packed day here in Ethiopia, in Addis Ababa, meeting with the foreign minister, the president, the prime minister, and going to the U.S. Embassy and meeting with an interreligious council there. So it's been a packed day. In his meeting with the Ethiopian president, Secretary Pompeo commended her work and her leadership in advancing landmark reforms and her efforts to support women's empowerment initiatives. And later on in the press availability, he said that it was just remarkable that Ethiopia has a woman president. In his meeting with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, the secretary said that they discussed the importance of organizing free and fair elections to be held in August later this year. And he thanked the Prime Minister for his leadership in the Horn of Africa and for Ethiopia's peacekeeping deployments to Somalia, Sudan, and South Sudan. At the joint press availability with Ethiopia's foreign minister, I had the opportunity to ask the foreign minister and Secretary Pompeo, and I asked the foreign minister what was the greatest accomplishment these last 2 years, and what was the biggest concern. He was very candid and said that they had made remarkable progress towards reform, but that youth unemployment was his biggest worry. Secretary Pompeo said that for him, the greatest thing about the reform in Ethiopia is that it's coming from Ethiopia itself, and the role of the U.S. was not to impose anything, but simply to support the efforts that are ongoing. The next stop on the trip will be Saudi Arabia and then Oman,